Everyone has moments in life they can't just stop thinking about. They can be embarrassing things, like that one time you face planted in front of a group of teenagers, or something amazing like the first time you hosted your family for the holidays. And on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, hosted by me, Keke Palmer, and presented by BMW, we know to savor the good memories and let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Chelsea Lupkin. She's a writer, director, and cinematographer who has created a diverse amount of work across multiple platforms. Her short film, Lucy's Tale, premiered at Fantasia in 2018 and is now part of Alter's YouTube channel, and her short film, Flagged, is on Hulu as part of their Huluween lineup. She's also been the DOP on over 2,000 videos for Delish. And a senior programmer and editorial writer for the website Short of the Week. Hello, Chelsea. What don't you do?
What don't you do?
I think you're just I feel like I'm just realizing now that I really need a vacation.
I mean, seriously,
oh, what was I thinking?
And you might be prepping a movie. It's like,
right.
do.
Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, might be making a movie.
Okay, but before we do get all to that creative stuff, which there's a lot, and there's something I definitely want to talk to you about. How did you get introduced to horror?
Accident. It was a complete accident. It was one of those things where I realized that I should be making films that I actually like to watch.
Okay.
And I've grown up so much, watching horror movies and scary things and action adventure. So why was I not making them? And I kind of just by happenstance wrote this body horror, Lucy's Tale, which then went on to YouTube, and I think it's at like 5.2 million views or something insane like that. And it was just sort of this aha moment of, oh, you're kind of good at this. Stop doing everything else. Just stop everything and do scary things.
So take us back to childhood. What was your first horror movie? Did someone introduce it to you? Did you find it by yourself? How did that come about? As a kid?
I think I need to actually give my parents some credit and some flack because one of my first times really getting into horror was at a beach house in North Carolina. I was staying there with my family, and there was a rainy day, and they had a bunch of VHSs, and one of them was Jaws, and I thought that was good to watch while I'm going to go to the beach, the next day. Terrible idea. Parents, what were you thinking? Why did you let me watch that?
How old were you?
Oh, man, I must have been like 7 or 8. Easy.
Okay.
I was young.
Primo time. Prima saw me watching that.
I saw it when I was 4. Like, why did anyone think that was the good idea?
I don't know. Right. Like I remember very distinctly that my parents, I was afraid to like go in the water immediately, and they would like, lift me up and be like, no, we're going to walk in together. I'm just like, no, I don't want to be in the ocean now. Thanks.
Not even a little bit. Don't even want to dip a toe. Not even a little bit.
I've shared this story a couple times, but I saw that very young as well. And I lived in Alaska, and I was terrified of swimming on my back in the indoor pool in Alaska because I was afraid that Jaws, as I called it, would come up from the depths of the pool and eat me.
You and me too. I was on the swim team for a very brief moment, and I again, being a little kid in elementary school, as like professional swimmers are, and I would be so afraid that there would be a shark that's just coming to get me in, a chlorine-filled...
In the chlorinated pool. Yep.
Exactly.
And the shark was like 25 feet, and the pool is definitely not that deep. Like, logics don't like come into play, but it's like, no, that shark is in the pool. And it's going to eat me.
It's going to eat me.
So did you grow up watching horror movies? Like, you saw Jaws, and did you keep watching horror? Or was it something that kind of your parents let you watch or were interested in?
Yes. So right after I really got into, I saw Jaws and I liked it. Couldn't stop singing, Show Me the Way to Go Home. Then my parents were like, I think, right? Then my parents were like, I think you might be old enough. Maybe you should watch Jurassic Park. Maybe you should watch, Alien. So, which really freaked me out. But I really liked those movies, but I was also a total scaredy cat. Like, I would always kind of, there was nothing to be done, but I was hooked. It didn't matter.
Did most horror movies scare you, or did you like get overcome that fear, or was it that it could pervade through like most of your childhood?
I don't think I ever really overcame fear of watching scary movies, but I certainly grew an appreciation for them, especially because most of my youth had, I had a VHS, so I could just like pause it, rewind it, pause it, Everybody has that kind of visceral. But if I was too scared, I would just pause the movie for a minute, pace around the room and come back, because at that point, I wasn't old enough to go to the movie theater. So
right.
That's because I think most horror movies that have some real notoriety are rated R. So I couldn't do that.
Yeah. What were some of your favorites growing up?
What were my favorite scary movies growing up? Great question. For some reason, and this wasn't my favorite, but I watched it a lot, and I don't know why I watched it a lot. The Ring I really liked. But it was also one of those things where I saw it too young. Dad took my sister and I to the movie theater and then kept playing pranks on us where he would call the landline.
No. Oh,
thank
God.
Dad.
I hate it when dads do that.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That's rude. Sorry. Obviously, I had experience with that.
I feel like, honestly, like in hindsight, I think my parents like really set me up to start making scary movies.
Oh, man. Okay, so as an adult, do you still get scared watching movies, or have you, become desensitized to them?
Yes. As an adult, I do get scared watching movies. And I think that's probably why I might be good at writing them. Because I'm a scaredy cat. I'm a complete scaredy cat. I remember watching for the first time, and I know this is super sacrilege, but I saw A Quiet Place on the plane. And I was coming back. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So wait for this. So I'm in the middle seat. I'm coming back from LA to New York. It's a 5-hour flight. And I put on A Quiet Place, teeny tiny monitor, get my headphones in, and I start watching this movie, and I really got scared. Like, I'm one of those people that will like put their knees up and plug their ears and shut their eyes and think maybe that'll help. It doesn't. I
love that.
By the way, spoiler alert, it doesn't. But so halfway through this movie, and, I'm jumping every 5 seconds. This older woman next to me in the window seat, she taps me on the shoulder. And I immediately apologize. I'm like, oh man, maybe I like jumped and I jostled her or something. And I'm like, I'm so
were you
sorry.
in the middle? Were you in the middle seat?
Yes, I was in the middle seat on the plane.
Oh no!
This was a lot of oh no. So I'm in the middle seat and this woman just taps me and I'm like, I immediately apologize. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, was I being distracting? Like, are you okay? She goes, no. I want to know what you're watching because I want to watch that. I was like, bless your heart. So she was just like, yeah, it must be a really good movie, the way that you're reacting. So I was like, well, it is. So A Quiet Place.
What a wild experience watching that on a plane.
That wasn't a good idea.
But I love that you still got scared. Were you watching on like the little screen, or were you watching on your laptop?
No, it was like the little screen on like, the headset or like
on the headset, the headrest.
Headrest of, in front of me. Totally. On Delta.
That's amazing.
Oh my God, that is incredible. And so was that the most recent movie to really scare you, or has there been something even more recently that's kind of freaked you out?
Actually, there is something that was recent that freaked me out, and I'm ashamed to say it.
This is a safe space.
Is it? You might judge me for this. I had never seen until last year Blair Witch Project.
Oh.
Never saw it. Oh, right.
You might get some judging from Mary Beth, but you won't get, because that's like one of her favorites.
No judgment. I'm not saying those things. No judgment.
I'm kidding.
No, I was really wrapped up in that, especially because while I live in the heights in New York City, we have a lot of forests. So I'm just like used to kind of wandering around. Like that's, and then the Blair Witch Project, woof, man. Like I knew what it was about, but I just didn't, I never saw it.
My favorite little tidbit that I've said a million times in this podcast is that I live like 45 minutes from Burkittsville.
Oh no.
And I grew up near Burkittsville, like went to camp. Like, not in Burkittsville, but, like, in the woods. And so that we always scared each other about the Blair Witch. So, yes, near and dear
that, though.
To my heart.
That's, like, the kind of friendships that I want. I just want my friends to scare me all the time.
I'm that friend. I was just thinking back to when you were talking about your dad pranking with the ring. I used to do that with my friends all the time. We go 7 days and just, like, leave random messages on their phone.
Right. Ugh.
What are some of your favorite horror movies now as an adult? Or is there like a subgenre that you kind of feel yourself more attracted to than others?
I think that I've really grown an appreciation for a lot of Stephen King writing.
Okay.
And I mean, obviously, like, I love coming of age, and one of my shorts is very Carrie-esque. That was Lucy's Tale. I really like coming of age horror. I think there's something to be said for being vulnerable and trying to learn as you go as a kid. So a lot of those kind of younger skewing, scary stories really speak to me.
That's actually a good segue. So here's the thing. Back in 2019, out of nowhere, Alter's like, hey, do you want to review this short film called Lucy's Tale? And I'm like, yes, I would love to. So I review it. It's great. I really enjoyed it. And, you're moving on to different things, and I'm reviewing. So this is one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, because cut forward to I think it was late 2020, and pandemic is happening. I'm stuck at home. I'm doing a lot of comfort watches, which includes a lot of cooking shows on YouTube. I love to watch cooking shows. And at this time, I was looking for new places because Bon Appetit had some issues. And so I was looking for other things to to watch. And I came across this little show on Delish called Iconic Eats. And I was immediately enraptured, and I started watching anything that came on Delish. And before I know it, there is a video where I think it was you and a couple other of the actual the foodie people all in Zoom places in your individual.
Yeah, we were in our homes. Yeah.
Yes, filming. And I was like, Chelsea, why is that name so familiar? And why does she look familiar? And then I realized that Alter had included a headshot back in 2019 when they sent out the stuff. And it came together that the person that had been filming all of these videos that I was watching and getting me through one of the most hard times is the person I reviewed back in 2019, the short film. And I was like, what the fuck?
I know. I feel like, it's one of those things that it's you wear many hats, but I love when the internet kind of you sort of realize it's all connected.
Mm-hmm. Seriously. It was my mind just exploded. I was like, wait. No, really?
It's funny. So Delish, which is this food site magazine, it's got, a bunch of series on YouTube. I actually, was part of the original team to kind of build this thing into a video brand at the time. I think this was like late 2015. And I had just left working at MTV, and I had got this gig, and I knew nothing about food. And here I am now, you know, doing all these crazy series that have racked up, you know, millions of views. And it's a testament to, you know, the talent we have, you know, Tess Coleman from Iconic Eats. Now we have a new host.
Tess was great.
Adriana Redding, who is fabulous.
And I love her.
Yes. And also Julia Smith. She's another one, and June, and, you know.
I have been watching June, even though like I'm not a Budget Eats person, I have been watching June's Budget Eats like just nonstop.
June
I'm like,
is
2 hours. Yes. Give me this long form content.
She honestly, like, she's like making her own like little feature films essentially in her apartment. And it's also a testament to like our editors who can like, you know, take that and make it into something that's consumable. I know, food pun intended. But yes, but yeah, like it was one of those things where like I really felt like, you know, food is fun. And it's so funny because at the time that I started there, I really didn't think it was going to be cool. Like I was like, oh, well, I came from MTV and I'm doing these comedy sketches and music shows. What am I going to do in food? And I was so stupid because, you know, it really did. It really blew up, and it's such a joy to have that be part of what my career has become, aside from, you know, horror and everything else.
What an incredible contrast between making really cute, fun, funny culinary videos and horror movies. I love it. It's so cool.
It's like eventually I'm going to have to make some sort of horror movie in a kitchen. There's going to be some blood and guts, you know.
It's funny because I have like this short film idea of like
like
combining sort of like a Rosanna Pansino type, you know, host that's like cooking at home, but it's doing like cannibalism.
You know, I'd watch it.
I'd watch the fuck out of that.
I mean,
it played straight, but like she's telling you how to serve up rack of man,
you know, like, and it's so funny because like I feel like I've seen these kind of crazy, like especially short films or otherwise, like at film festivals, and it's like, oh, why have I not done that yet?
You should.
Only a matter of time.
It seems like the perfect like marriage there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It'd be a funny TikTok channel too. I love TikTok. Like I love that shit, and I feel like it'd be so funny. Like they have like recipe TikToks, and it's like your cannibal recipe TikTok. That would be incredible. You probably take it down pretty quickly, but it'd be so funny.
It would be. It would. Yeah. They would probably be like just taking it too seriously, but like maybe not. Honestly, like once you're on Ghost TikTok, Ghost Talk, spooky. Yeah.
Spooky Talk is my absolute favorite place to be.
Thriving there.
Thriving on Spooky Talk. Oh, I want to know your favorite. I want to know your favorites, but we're getting off track.
Sorry.
No, I'm just like, I could talk about spooky TikToks forever.
TikTok is so funny because it just like leads you down paths, and before you know it, you are like, how did I get here?
I mean, I'm convinced that I am in a global coven of witches at this point because of TikTok. So, right?
Hey, I'm here for that.
Yeah. I learned a lot about how to be a witch on TikTok. It's very cool.
Okay, so let's take it to Lucy's Tale and Flagged. So can you tell listeners a little bit about what like Lucy's Tale is about?
Yeah, Lucy, you know, it's a coming of age horror, but it's essentially came about because I wanted to make something about puberty, which is already a horror in and of itself. So why not turn it into a horror movie? I mean, that was really like the seed, the spark, if you will, is like, you know, coming into womanhood, but instead she's coming into her villainhood. And like, isn't that something else? So yeah. So, you know, the movie, it follows a young girl named Lucy who would, you know, really just wants to grow big, you know, maybe bigger boobs, but instead grow something else. I don't want to spoil it, but go watch the short.
Yeah, that's what immediately pulled me to, and I was so happy that you were talking about like the Carrie, because it gives me that kind of vibes, but more of a, I mean, I'll be honest, I love Brian De Palma's Carrie, and I love the story Carrie, but they definitely come from a male perspective. Yes. And so that's one thing I really liked about that pulled me to Lucy's Tale, is that it was being told by a woman's perspective. And I thought that was sad that that's like, you know, a boom moment or something like that. But it was like I thought really cool.
Yeah. You know, it was fun also because we had such an incredible cast for that. Actually, one of them is in a crazy sci-fi adventure series in Spain called Paradiso, the Irina Bravo, who plays Lucy. I don't think it's made to Netflix here yet, but it is in Netflix in Spain. And then Mary Neppy was the star of Snatchers. I don't know if you guys saw that a couple years ago. Yeah, it was a series. Yeah. No, it was really awesome. But regardless.
Oh, yep.
Snatchers, yeah. But she gets pregnant and then, it's blood and guts.
Yeah.
That one. Yay, Mary Neppy. But for the most part, it was one of those things where like I wanted to give voice to this kind of girl code, like these relationships between these young women, and that we can sometimes be really mean to each other through competitiveness, through just like, how society has kind of trained us to do that kind of thing. So for Lucy, she finds her independence. She's kind of like coming into herself, but she really is kind of this, in some ways, a bad guy, because she's coming into her villainhood, but she's also doing all these really bad things for all the right reasons. And for me, that was a really great hook to kind of give a social commentary on, more adult behavior and some things that weren't so great. And it's funny because now, I spent a lot of pandemic writing a 4-season show Bible for Lucy. I know. I wish people could see your faces. They can't. Hopefully, maybe one day that'll get made. But it's been a time to world build and write for me these past couple years.
Yeah.
And it's been an adventure. I really feel like, especially because, as you mentioned earlier, I'm a senior programmer for Short of the Week. And I see a lot of stuff. I see a lot of stuff. And for me, it was one of those things where like I was never really a writer until I started really explaining to filmmakers what they were doing right and what they were doing wrong. And that's how I learned how to, grab a pen and write stories. So yeah, we'll see. Fingers crossed. Maybe one day you'll see Lucy's Tale as a show.
That'd be amazing. I'm ready to go pound on doors. Who do we need to yell at?
I don't.
Netflix.
It's so funny.
Let's get Netflix on the floor.
Netflix, please call me, because it's so funny. I never really thought that it could do so well, but it's got like 66,000 likes. There's like thousands of comments, fan theories. And I worked on that with my creative producer, Sarah Calavano, who she and I have just like put our brains together of like, what does this world look like? But again, like we really wanted to make it feel like this was a women's story, but also really accessible to other people. So it kind of has some generous body vibes. There's a lot of things there to unpack, but we'll see. Knock wood.
Hell yeah. So we've talked about all of your creative endeavors and your horror history, but Chelsea,
yes,
what movie did you bring with you today for us to discuss?
It's funny. I really thought, oh, what's a really cool movie that scarred me for life? And then I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm going to put down The Mummy. 1999's The Mummy starring Brendan Fraser. That scared the shit out of me.
Oh, it's the best. So let me read everyone a quick synopsis before we jump in. At an archaeological dig in the ancient city of Hamunaptra, an American serving in the French Foreign Legion accidentally awakens a mummy who begins to wreak havoc as he searches for the reincarnation of his long-lost love. Chelsea, tell us your Scarred for Life story and why you chose this for the show.
Okay, so I chose this because, now that you now know that I have watched a lot of horror movies before I probably should have, this was a big one. This was another one. I was 8 or 9 when it came out. I didn't see it in a movie theater. My parents had rented it from Blockbuster. We're in our living room. We're watching this movie. And for one, there's so many jump scares, but it was really the big thing that scared me was the scarabs. It was the bugs. They
always
really,
the scarabs.
The sound, the fact that they could go into your skin and eat you. And here's the thing. So we stopped the movie halfway through because my sister and I got scared. And I was like, Mom, can I just sleep with Sid tonight? Can I sleep with my sister tonight, please? And she's like, no, you're going to start out in your room. Maybe if you get scared, fine, you can run into her room. I was a little kid. I was scared. And so I ran into my parents' room, grabbed my dad's socks, and I really thought this was going to work, guys. I took my long pajama pants and I tucked them into my socks, and I swore that was going to protect me from the scarabs. So they wouldn't crawl and eat my flesh from within. So yeah, I was really scared.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yep. Poor me. But it really haunted me. That haunted me.
To be fair, they are the most terrifying part of this movie. Even now, rewatching it as an adult, the moment when the warden, he drops it and it the gem and it hatches, and then it's digging into his shoe. I mean, sorry, young Chelsea, your socks aren't going to prevent it if it can dig through a shoe. But
don't tell me that. Don't tell me that.
Oh, and when you see it go up into his face. That part always ruined, when it's in his face and he rips, it still gives me...
It's so visceral.
Icky.
Whoever did the sound design, even on that movie, that held up. That held up real well.
The skittering sound.
Skittering, when they're running from all of them, across, the bridges and stuff and through the tomb, and they're all just this horrendous cacophony of, little beetle legs.
Yeah, but it's so crazy because, obviously you just said, this whole thing is in a tomb. It's so funny because I don't know if this was really marketed as a horror movie, but I think it's very much a horror movie, not just action and adventure. I mean, essentially it's an Egyptian ghost story. They're in a tomb. They're by campfires. They're talking about these scary ghosts. It's very ominous. There's jump scares from the beginning to the end. It's one after another. And it just really, really rocked me. Loved that movie.
The beginning is horrendous when he's mummified whole and you see them with the brain. Just everything about the beginning is horror movie. I've always considered this a horror movie. And yes, you have Brendan Fraser, Dreamboat. We'll talk about him later as the action star. And it has that kind of 1940s, because it takes place in the 1920s, but it has that adventure movie vibe. But between the opening sequence with him getting mummified alive, when he is wrapped up and he's moving all in as one, that always sticks out. He looks like a worm in a cocoon, and
they've cut out his tongue, and he's just sutured in there and can't move, and he's moving like a little worm.
Oh, it's just disgusting and terrible, and it's it sets it up for just this is not going to be this is going to be horrendous in a good way.
And you know what's so funny about it too is that while there's incredible, incredible graphics, while there is incredible special effects and action sequences, there's a lot of storytelling rules that it breaks, which I think is really fascinating because in movies, you should always show, not tell. But there's so much that is storytelling within storytelling where they're sitting around telling you these ghost stories or telling you how mummies get mummified, that it it keeps that sort of vibe of this is a ghost story. This is almost like a haunted house for these characters. They just happen to be in an Egyptian tomb. So I loved that.
I like that because I hadn't even thought about that before, because you're right. There's a lot of moments where it is giving little exposition dumps in some way, but telling how you do the mummy thing and all that kind of stuff. And it does feel like a bunch of people got around a story and are telling various campfire stories throughout the movie. And in fact, they do sort of at a couple points sit around a campfire and talk about the history and all of the kind of the stuff that they've experienced. And yeah, I like that.
The spooky music obviously comes in. There's so many gusts of wind. But,
the fact that they have to comment on that always keeps happening. That made me laugh this time.
I mean, this is one of those quotable movies. So I was rewatching The Mummy before, coming on with you guys. And I realized that the version I have doesn't even have some subtitles. And all of the lines, even the Egyptian stuff, I was I know every single line to this movie. And it's so quotable because there's so much comedy in it. The mummy is juicy,
that line.
I love that just how many things that they call attention to just in general. What a fun movie. And I think that kind of goes back to a lot of the movies that, really kind of guided me in what I like, what I want to watch, what I want to make. I grew up with Indiana Jones. Brendan Fraser was it, baby. Chef kiss.
Chef's kiss, Brendan Fraser in this role. I am obsessed with him. He is perfect. He is such a hunk in this movie. And I think this was because he was obviously in a lot of stuff before this, but in this one, he is his funny self, but also his suave self and his action star self. And he's like not slapstick, but a little bit goofy. So he's like a more relatable kind of adventure guy, because obviously he's a badass, but like makes a lot of mistakes. And like he is just a cutie with a booty.
He's the ultimate himbo in this movie.
He is the ultimate himbo. And like, oh, I just love Brendan Fraser's facial expressions and the way he delivers lines. He's just an iconic character in this movie. I love him.
I love him also because he's, like you said, he's so funny, and I love a man who's funny.
He's so funny. His comedic timing is incredible, and I'm so glad that people, like, he's finally having that, like, Frasier songs that's happening right now, like, in his stuff, because
I'm rooting for him.
I'm rooting for this man, but then I also would like to bring on the bisexual energy of this movie with Rachel Weisz's character on the opposite end of him, and how I loved her and wanted to be her simultaneously because she was a hot librarian. And I both want to be a hot librarian and want to be with a hot librarian. And I learned this when I first saw this movie at an impressionably young age, but didn't quite understand what was happening. Because I saw this movie when this came out in theaters when I think I was 6. So I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw this one and the second one. And between her and Enoch Sailor Moon, the lady, and like the fight at the beginning of the second one, I was like, am I gay? Like, I didn't know I was gay until I was like,
yes.
But like, oh, I love Rachel Weisz. Like the beginning with her knocking down all the books, my favorite of all time. Incredible.
Oh, the domino set piece.
Oh, it's so good. And she is just the incredible balance of like charismatic and cute and bookish and smart. And her and Brendan Fraser play so well off of each other.
Yeah.
Their dynamic is incredible. You know? And when she gets drunk by the fire, queen of my heart. When me and my fiance watch it together, we're both like, wow, this is the hottest woman we've ever seen.
Right. Yes. I do agree. You know what's also kind of great, like, and I'm realizing now, like rewatching it and you know, going through just the excitement of watching this movie again, that she was really one of the first female protagonists that was an adventurer that I saw on screen. And wow. And there was such a commentary of like, if you remember in the movie, there's like a moment where there's like the two groups that are digging. And one of the men from the other group goes, you know, they don't know anything. They're led by like a woman. And then it cuts to her being like, well, actually there's this statue with this thing and this thing. And I was like, yeah, that's badass. Like, yes, you know what? We can do that. We can do that. I can be that, not just that sexy librarian. But I can go out into, the desert and maybe wield a sword, and awesome. I want to see that. I wanted to see more of that. So that was cool.
Yeah. When I saw this movie for the first time, I saw it when it came out in theaters, 1999. I was 18. I was a little shit. I was a shit that like did not enjoy fun. Like I wanted things to be hardcore and scary and monstrous. And I also went to go see it. I went to go see it with my whole family, my parents, my younger brother, and my whole family is a huge Universal Monster movie fan. Like that's how I got introduced to the genre, was through the old 1930s Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, all that kind of stuff, and up through like Creature from the Black Lagoon and even the more comedic ones, Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, like all of that era of genre was like my introduction to it. So when I first saw this movie, I absolutely hated it.
Really?
Yes, because I wanted it to be like old school, and Mary Beth is shaking her head at me. I wanted it to be like old school, like The Mummy, not this like Indiana Jones meets the Mummy type.
You wanted the wrappings. Yeah.
I wanted the wrappings. I wanted the kind of slow moving monster, the kind of creepy
Mary Beth
like
is just
Victorian
putting her
setting.
arms out like she's a mummy.
I'm like a mummy. Yes, thank you. Visual, not a visual medium. God damn it. Remember, you've been doing this for a long time. Come on now.
But so that's what I wanted, and that's also what my dad wanted. And so what we got was definitely like Indiana Jones and the Mummy, or meets the Mummy, you know. It's like adventure movie, kind of pulp, like adventure from like the 1940s, 1950s, as you said, Mary Beth, like mixed with an old school Mummy. And so I did not like it when I first saw it. And it was also the year that like a couple OG like horror films were modernized. And so you had this one, and then it was followed up with The Haunting.
Yes.
That came out like maybe a month or two later. And that again took a very classic, one of my favorite books, Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of, the Haunting story, and modernized it and made it into this big effects extravaganza. And I didn't like it. I was like, so this 1-2 punch of these two movies when I was an 18-year-old little shit that didn't know fun, absolutely hated. And it was also like when I started to realize that there was like these PG-13 horror movies that I felt in my mind were like, just sort of like gutted from the horror that I had grown up watching, like the big explosions of gore in the 80s, and then the more dark, like nihilistic stuff that was happening in the early 90s, and then even the teen genre where it was like a lot of people getting slashed and hacked and killed. And then you have like this PG-13 stuff coming in, and I was like, oh, very PG-13 horror. And so I was a little shit when I first saw it.
And when did you change your mind is the question.
So I had not seen this film until last night when I rewatched it. That was the first time since I saw it in the movie theaters that I saw this movie. And I think it has some problems that I'm happy to dig into when we get to that point. I think it has a couple problems.
Mary Beth just eye-rolled. It's fine. It's fine, guys.
I mean, the episode that came out today that came out when we were recording this was Martyrs, which I do not like and is like her favorite film. And so, this is just like a 1-2 punch of things that are happening recently. But listen, I don't hate this movie. I think there are some problems with it, but I had a lot more fun, and I was really vibing with it last night.
Okay, that's all I can ask for. That's all I want.
Much more positive.
That's all I wanted to hear. As long as you were vibing.
Let me make an argument for why you should change your mind about this movie.
All right, okay. I'm here for it.
Some of the best horror movies have funny characters.
Yes.
Because when they're funny, you like them. And you don't want to see anything bad happen to them. And I think this checked every bucket.
It does, absolutely. And that's actually why I was enjoying myself a whole lot more this time, because it's so funny, because back then I was like, the idea of taking horror and comedy and mashing it together, I hated.
Yeah.
Even though like when I look back at some of the films that I loved in the 80s were doing that, where it was like The Blob is funny.
Totally.
It's dark. It's morbid, but there's funniness to it. So many of those 80s movies had humor in it, but I didn't see that because I was just like honed in on that gore aspect.
I think comedy is horror's secret weapon.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. Completely agree. And so that's why I think I fell in love with this a little bit more on this rewatch. The only thing that like was a big like, I don't like this, is the okay, we talked about Rachel Weisz's character, but I feel like at a certain point she isn't given a whole lot to do.
You're fired. You're fired. No more. This is the final straw.
She takes us through the entire story. She's the boss bitch who's just like, listen, this is how we're going to save the day. She is the beacon of how to survive an evil mummy man.
Until she gets kidnapped.
Yeah, but even then, she like knocks out a boom. I mean, come on. She can hold her own.
And becomes the like damsel in distress that must be saved by the strong men in her life.
Look, it was 1999. We can't expect things to be perfect gender-wise, but she's a perfect character. I mean, and I will hear nothing.
1999 was the year of She's All That, and that's all we have to say.
1999 was the best year for cinema.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Full stop.
It was a great year for cinema.
Regardless of genre, it is the best year for movies.
In horror, The Sixth Sense of the Blair Witch Project, that's all 1999.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know.
Crazy.
Like the list of movies that came out in 1999, I mean, you have The Matrix, you have Magnolia, you have American Beauty, which might not have aged very well, but at the time, like, great. You had like...
I like that movie so much. Anyway, sorry. Anyway,
it was the bag, and it was the bag floating, and it was just art. And my 18-year-old brain was like, oh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Didn't Magnolia come out in 1999?
Yeah.
It did.
Okay.
Which I still think is a phenomenal movie. It's my favorite of his, but that is a whole other podcast. Okay. So yes, I I agree. And I knew that me saying that they're getting kidnapped on this was probably going to be like here comes the pitchforks coming for Terry. But it kind of bothered me that like the movie. Okay, so the movie does this thing where it winks and it kind of does a knowing like nudge to the audience. And in some ways, I would say it's a little meta in the fact that it takes like.
Absolutely.
It takes like the Indiana Jones story, takes the Mummy story, and puts a character that like is like not here to deal with any of it, and sort of like has that winking in the moment. And so there's the line when he's trying to get, is it Winston? Is that the pilot's name?
Yes. Winston.
I love him.
I love Winston. Oh, king.
Bless.
He's trying to get Winston, and he's like, his line is, we're going to rescue the damsel in distress, kill the bad guy, save the world. So it lays out these like dated plot tropes that like are familiar throughout all of like pulp fiction. Yes. Pulp adventure fiction.
Yes.
And then it doesn't really do much to subvert it though. And that was my problem. In my mind, I was like, none of this. Okay. You're laying this out and you're saying I'm poking fun at this, but then I'm not going to subvert it.
You know what I think? I think that even though it says that at the end, it's already set itself up to subvert some of those gender norms that we see in movies, especially with Rachel Weisz's character in the beginning, that I think it's actually forgivable. And it's almost as if like, you know, that these characters are not going to be successful in all of those things, because really you should never say in a line, hey, this is the stuff that's going to happen. And then, you know, like, why would I want to watch that? I want to see conflict, you know, make a claim. It's probably not going to end up that way. But I do like the fact that, Rachel Weisz's character, it's Evie. God, I love Evie. She, does have a one-on-one fight, you know, with a dagger with Enoxinamun's, you know, mummy self. So in a lot of ways, it, you know, obviously we're only talking about the first mummy, but even in the, you know, giving her more physicality by the end, by the third act, what's there? She wasn't entirely saved by all the dudes. Like she very much came, you know, out to defend herself, to defend her body, because otherwise, you know, she would have been dead and Enoxinamun would have, you know, ended up in her form, I assume. Because body possession, scary stuff.
Mm-hmm. And doesn't she offer herself up instead of being kidnapped technically? Like she kind of voluntarily is like, take me with you. So
she
like
has a Hunger Games moment.
So there is a little bit like autonomy there instead of her being kidnapped and like taken away, like hauled over a shoulder screaming. Like she at least, there's a little bit more agency in her decision.
Yeah.
She has to be saved, but there still is a little bit more agency, I think, than you see in a lot of these movies where it's like, the damsel's whisked away screaming in her white gown.
Yeah, like, and you know what? She also laughed at Imhotep when like, he came out, you know, the plane came out of the big sandstorm, like, you didn't kill my man. Like, I love that. Like, she felt like she could be that, give that clap back. That's what I want. I want to see some sass. And she was sassy.
And she is sassy.
I just had to play a little devil's advocate and throw it out there because
well, that's okay. I love it. But then we're here to be like, this is why she's still great.
Give me drama.
Here's the thing, and I challenge our listeners to do this. Can you give us a movie in which, by the finale, the women aren't paired up to fight each other and the men aren't paired up to fight each other? Because in a lot of movies that have that kind of, the female ends up fighting at the very end and the male ends up fighting at the very end, they're paired up by gender.
Star Wars?
Where does the women, when does the women fight?
It doesn't.
Rey fights dudes. Yeah. And she and Kylo Ren fight in Star Wars.
See?
True. Okay, good.
Also, technically, Princess Leia had one of those little blaster boys and it did pew, pew, pew. You know, she didn't need.
Because I was just thinking back, like even with like Guardians of the Galaxy and whatnot, where you have like Gamora and you have.
See, that's frustrating. That is a bad shame on them. Shame on them for doing that.
It seems like a lot of times that seems to be like the trope that people go to. It seems to be the go-to trope.
Yeah. But like in slashers, it's usually a woman against a giant
always
guy.
A final girl.
Am I going out? Okay.
No, you're not. No, I think you're right. Halloween, but even actually, sometimes some of the Marvel gets it right. Like Captain Marvel, she destroys Jude Law's character, right? Who was
he in that movie?
Yeah, I know.
I've stopped
I honestly watched that like once, and I was like, "This is it. This is the end." Sorry, trigger. No, but I think a lot of the final girl principle of like, I can, like I'm going to go up against, so and so is it's there.
No, I think more. I guess mine was more towards when you have like a male and a
Action
female
movies?
action
movies.
hero. And then they have to go fight
Yeah.
against someone, like in The Mummy. They tend to be paired up against gender, it seems to be. Like in a lot of cases, like that seems to be the kind of go-to. And it kind of, I don't know, it makes me sad. I'm like, why does the woman have to be fighting a woman? Like, why can't the woman, like, be kicking the man's ass?
I feel like John Wick did something. I can't remember.
You know what? Wait, I think we're just forgetting our movies. I think we're forgetting our movies because, like, also, my brain immediately went to the Wolverine fighting in with Hugh Jackman and that metal cat lady. What was her name?
Oh yeah, fuck.
I can't do it. I'll Google it. Guys. Should I Google it?
She had like her whole fingertips.
She had her whole fingertips, but she was fighting, and also again, Star Wars. Like, I think we see more and more of it, but it's not as often. The fact that we can still list out a few of these movies, this isn't like a general rule, is a problem. And I think, and I wish more people were pointing it out, because you're right. It shouldn't just be a girl matched up with another girl. Like, that's not fair. I want to see some kick-ass.
Girls can kick guys' asses. Yeah. And honestly, look, feminism. Guys can kick women's asses.
Yes. Destroy.
One of the things that I really thought was really funny on this rewatch, particularly as this came out in 1999, is the dumb American trope.
So many fun ones.
Like, everyone in this, all the Americans in this movie are just dumb.
Yeah.
They're dumb. They're boorish. They discount the women, as you mentioned earlier, Chelsea.
Beastly Americans. That's
beastly
what they
Americans.
say.
No offense.
No offense. Yeah.
I love how they're like how both Evie and her brother are like, demeaning the Americans and then looking at Rick and being like, no offense, although he is like totally the total embodiment of the things that they're even talking about.
Like the crazy masculinity of like, look at all my guns, I can do all the saving, I'm an adventure boy, pew 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 pew. Because he is just like them. Because like the cowboy. Also, this gave me. I think Steve and I, my fiance and I, like watched this and Bram Stoker's Dracula from Coppola back to back or something like that. It's got that similar structure a little bit in terms of like the characters I was thinking about, just in terms of like the group of the three suitors and these Americans kind of, and then there's the main group, kind of that weird parallel to me kind of stuck out in terms of the characters we have and how these are both horror adventure movies of these classic monsters that I hadn't thought about before.
Which I hope that they never get rid of the Universal Mummy ride. I'm just saying.
Oh, it's the best one. It's the best. When they set the ceiling on fire and you're like, oh my God, it's the end. Yeah, it's the best.
Best ride
here we go.
is gone.
Oh my God.
The best ride is gone. Yeah. The best ride was Jaws.
I agree.
And I know it's not the best ride. But I saw your picture the other day, Chelsea, on Instagram, where you were taking a picture in front of Bruce that was hung up there. And it made me so sad because the Jaws ride is gone for what? Harry Potter?
I think so.
Tore it up?
It's funny because when I was 7, I was put on that ride, and my mom still feels guilty because she's just like, I cried. I was like, Mom, I don't want to go on this. No, you're going to go on this ride. I went on the Jaws ride at 7.
That's so funny because we went to Universal as a family, and my brother wasn't quite 7. He was a little bit older. But when Jaws got the boat, he had to jump out of the boat. Yeah. And I was like, into the water? Right. He was so scared. He thought like, I don't know what he thought. It was just like an impulse. He wanted to jump out of the boat. I think he was like 10. It was incredible. And we felt so bad. We didn't know, like, we did not think that was going to happen. We were like not anticipating it at all. It was very surprising. We were like, holy shit, what is happening? You are not like this usually.
Like, the shark didn't even work all the time. Like,
no, it sure didn't.
No, it did not. It did not. But it worked on ours. Yeah. And boy, oh boy, it is pretty scary. Even though you know it's fake, it's wild.
It's big. I mean, like, honestly though, like, look, I love seeing, the old school kind of monsters, which I don't know, spoiler alert, I heard a rumor, and I'm sure that this is probably verified on Google, but I think there's going to be a Universal Monsterverse. So I think you might get your wish there, Terry.
They've been talking about doing that back. Like,
talking about
they
this,
keep
though,
talking about it, but
because the 2017 Mummy was hot garbage, and I think that was them trying to reboot it. But I also know that is it Karen Kusama doing Dracula?
She was attached to
it for a bit.
Maybe. She was, and now they are doing Renfield and Nick Cage's Dracula, which is
that'll be something.
So fucking excited. I love Dracula. Dracula's my favorite.
No, that's also a good one. Oh man. These are great movies. Okay. Just like, I should rewatch that. I should rewatch this.
But the Mummy ride is good. That I've only been to Universal Studios once, and it was like the year before the Jaws ride was gone. And so I managed to finally get on the Jaws ride. And then I also did the Mummy, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love those rides. And I'm with you. I hope they never get rid of the Mummy ride because it's so much fun.
It like just, it mummified him forever. It's this hot man. Brendan Fraser, we love you. If you're listening to this, please be my friend.
Please be my friend. Yep. That's all
Speaking
I want.
of hot men, here's the thing.
Hell yeah.
Like I said, until last night, I had not seen this movie since I saw it in 1999.
Are you in love?
In my mind, the guy that played Imhotep
Thank
was
you.
actually...
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. No. But before we get to that, I thought it was Billy Zane.
Me too. Me too. I thought it was Billy Zane for years.
Made that connection.
I thought it was Billy Zane until I was watching it last night. I was like, okay, it looks like Billy Zane, but that is not Billy Zane. And in fact, I even went to Twitter when I was like stalking Billy Zane, and his bio says, not the Mummy.
Oh my God.
I thought, when I first saw this, I thought it was the guy from Titanic. I was like, oh my God, that's the guy from Titanic.
Nope.
No, it's not.
It's
but
not.
It looks like him. Oh, he's hot though.
He's not as hot to me as the leader of the Magi. I'm sorry.
Oh, but he's
outed fair. Outed fair.
It's funny because I think
his luscious locks.
Everything about it was like rugged. He just hit all the check boxes for me. And I think at the time that I watched this, I thought he was cuter than Brendan Fraser.
I still think he's cuter than Brendan Fraser.
Hey.
Oh, he's riding around the desert. And he's just so hot.
And everything is serious. And he has like a hawk. Anyone who has a friend that's an animal is instantly attractive to me.
Why is everyone in this movie so hot? It's a formative experience watching this for me. Like, I watched this movie when I was under the age of 10. And my dad rented it, and I remember chugging Pepsi Blue. Does anyone else remember Pepsi Blue?
Yes.
Pepsi Blue, and I loved it. And I was chugging this and watching The Mummy and The Mummy 2 over and over again. And a Nox and a Moon fighting in 2. I know this is 2, but formative. And when she's painted in gold, and you can see this in the beginning of this one. It's just I wanted to be here so badly. And as an older white woman, realizing interesting for me as a young white girl to want that. But I wanted to be her so bad.
On occasion on YouTube, that fight sequence will be recommended. Watch this movie scene. I'm like, sure, every time, click it.
You're like, sure. Yeah, of course I fucking will. Duh.
I also want to bring this up earlier when we were kind of lusting over Rachel Weisz, because listen, I'm Kinsey 6, but Rachel, she's hot. But one of my friends, I was talking with my friends that I was going to watch this last night for the podcast, and they're like, she was like, Rachel Weisz is so hot. And then she brought up that there was this Reductress article that came out in 2019, and the title of it is that's the only important part of this is the title. But the title was "Woman Cozily Cupping Mug, Secretly Thinking About Getting Absolutely Railed by Rachel Weisz." And I think that's I think that's fair.
It's me.
It's you. It's me too.
Because she's stunning.
But it's just this movie is just a beautiful combination of incredible actors who are pretty to look at, but also are really talented.
Yeah.
Even Jonathan, who's so fucking annoying, I have a soft spot in my heart for his character. And Benny, who's a little snake, but I have, again, a soft spot for that actor. And everyone in this movie is just so good. And I think the action is incredible, and the horror elements, especially with the actual mummy. That actual mummy is disgusting and scary. And the way that he takes body parts to make himself whole is just, and especially when he gets the guy with the glasses, he takes his
Mr.
eyes,
Burns' eyes,
and he's wandering in the dark,
and his tongue.
It's it's so horror because he's in the dark by himself. He doesn't have eyes or a tongue, and it's just absolutely horrific. And
a great reveal where she walks up behind him and taps his shoulder and turns around, and his eyes are.
I know we talked about parallels to other movies, But that scene it's giving a nod to Jurassic Park. And here's why. So when she comes up on Mr. Burns, she goes, "Oh, Mr. Burns, like, thank goodness you're here. I was just starting to get scared." That's like the scene with Ellie from
and Samuel L.
and Samuel L.
Jackson, the
Jackson
arm.
when with the arm coming down, after she's just like, there's the velociraptors behind her, like poor Laura Dern. But Samuel L. Jackson, I was like, I was just beginning to get scared. Boom. Like I think you're onto something about this being super meta, because not only is it like a wink wink every 5 seconds with like some of those comedic lines, but it really is also, making its own version of like all these horror elements and all these famous movies that we have seen. And, obviously the easiest one to spot is Indiana Jones, but Jurassic Park. Yeah. Mr. Burns was Arnold.
Hell yeah.
That's a good point, because like the moment you started, I was like, okay, I'm curious to see where you're going to go with this Jurassic Park. And I was like, oh wait, no, absolutely.
I like watched that scene and I was like, oh man, like it was like this light bulb went on. And you know what I also think too now, having seen this movie again, as I'm starting to find my footing in my writing, hopefully we'll be making some movie things. I definitely learned a lot just from watching that movie. And I didn't realize how much, it's even just from the creepy shadows in the background. And it wasn't just like, obviously I've seen, classic horrors, but I think this movie is one of those films that like has really stuck with me in a lot of ways. Am I going to write a story about a mummy? Probably not. But I might borrow some things like as far as comedic elements, and I do love a good action adventure.
I do think the structure is really interesting too, because it starts off, we have the kind of cold open set in the past. So it kind of establishes, the mummy mythos very quickly. And then it's an adventure film. We have like a set piece on the river where the boat's on fire and there's, things are falling in the water, horses, there's a shootout. Like it has that adventure feel. And then it goes to the mines and then or to the tombs. And then it becomes a very claustrophobic, what I wanted was when I was 18 years old, like the whole movie to be like sort of this kind of claustrophobic action set piece within the tomb. And then they leave it and then it becomes like a biblical story almost, where there's the plagues are being visited and everything. And then they go back to the tomb. So like it has it is constantly changing its scope and its direction throughout the film. And I think that's really impressive for a movie that's 2 hours long.
I think the tomb is like a haunted house. I mean, it's got all these compartments. There's so many areas for jump scares, like even the scarabs again, because they were horrifying, coming out of the the floor and the walls and this and that, the other. But yeah, like you said, even too with these plagues, I mean, it happens that like right now as we're recording this, it's Passover. I'm a Jewish filmmaker. Hi. But like the plagues were something that was super spooky, growing up and hearing that, like being a Jewish person, and to see the plagues kind of in The Mummy was just like, oh, that's really scary. Like, no, I don't want to see a whole bunch of bugs.
I don't want to deal with that.
Or the locusts and the boils. I mean, like everything about that, is our first kind of omen type storytelling. And I thought that was really fascinating how they kind of revamped something that I think the masses are familiar with, but making it into something else.
Yeah, and with the boils too, it turns into a zombie movie.
Totally. This is a zombie movie.
I love that Jonathan is like walking through and he runs into them. And he's like, it's sort of like, it kind of reminds me of like the Shaun of the Dead that would come out later. We're like brains, they're trying to like, make be part of the zombies. Yeah. And here he's like Imhotep and walking around as if he's one of them. And I thought that was such a clever thing to kind of bring zombies in an interesting way that felt, right for the movie, and then kind of play with that genre as well.
I mean, this is Living Dead, right? Is this all Living Dead or Undead? Yeah.
I will say the zombie mummy army, not the best CGI. I will say some of the CGI does not hold up as well. I will say.
Agreed.
I am offering a criticism here.
But, I'll be on the opposite side and I'll counter that criticism.
Wow.
Yeah, what? Head tilt?
I think the mummy itself is really a well done piece of CG.
Oh, yeah, yes, for 1999, yeah.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
I think the individual CG might be, you could tell that that's not a real creature, but I will say that in comparison to a lot of movies that are coming out right now, the way that they shot this, where it was live action, they had the guy that played the mummy,
Arnaud something, or
Arnold Vosloo.
Oh, yeah.
I'm probably screwing up his last name, Vosloo. He was basically walking around. I found an interview with him that talked about how he felt like he was a Christmas tree because he had all these LED strips on him. But he was like physically on the script, on set while they were filming this stuff. And then they used makeup, prosthetics, and CGI to get that look.
Yeah.
And so
cool.
I was really cognizant of it this time because I'm very hypercritical with CG because I grew up with like, you know, all this practical effects. And so watching movies today where it's like all CG, I'm like, okay, it feels like there's a disconnect between the people.
Hey, at least it's not the early 2000s. Like, let's be real. That was particularly bad.
The Mummy Returns.
Oof. But,
let's not talk about The Rock and the Scorpion King.
I mean, now we've got
that.
deep fakes and they've redone it, and you're just like, oh, I wish they had that technology then, but they didn't.
But it's a physical person that they're reacting to, and you can tell, and I think it gives a presence to the film in a way that it doesn't feel like they're just, you know, react to this ball over here. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a presence here that while the CG might not have aged in some cases, I still think it looks really good.
I think that the elongated jaw is always really terrifying and uncanny when he opens up and he roars. But, you know, with all the little CGI and that kind of perfect blend of practical and, you know, CGI and sound effects, when the bug comes up his neck and like across his cheek and then he eats it.
Yes. Oh, I love that shit so much. I love whenever a movie does that with like a bug crawling on someone's face and they eat it. It's disgusting, but I love it. And like this
crunch.
is so great.
The crunch.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, I'm obsessed.
I know we talked about the sound design a couple of times, but going back to even before the scarabs are introduced, I love the scene where they're walking through the tunnel and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what they're going to find. And then there's that moment of skittering sound that's like coming in the walls and they're like,
sounds like
what
bugs.
Is that? Sounds like bugs, right? It's such a good foreshadowing moment, but again, it's sound design that immediately like, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot there are creepy ass bugs in this tomb that are ready to like, what are they going to do? Like that, it's such a good little setup.
I also loved the sound effect that they used for the evil presence. Wasn't just like this like whooshing or ominous sound. They were combining like all these animal sounds. I don't know if you noticed it, but there was like dogs barking and this, that, the other. And you're just like, ooh, that's really freaky. Like, it's like this like howling and you're like, oh, like it sounds like recognizable things, but together it sounds otherworldly, which I thought was really, really clever.
One of the things I like to do is dig into kind of like the history of the film. And this is a film that had a very long production history. Because it first started out when they originally were gonna make The Mummy in 1987. George Romero was attached to write and direct, and then that fell through. And then Clive Barker was attached to direct based on his treatment and a script by Mick Garris that was dark and violent. The story was, this sounds kind of wild. The story was revolving around an art museum that rebuilds the entire Egyptian tomb in Beverly Hills.
I think I heard about this.
But it was deemed too dark, sexual, and filled with mysticism and too weird for the studio.
Maybe it'll still get made. When does it get made?
I want to see Clive Barker's Mummy, and I want to see someone have sex with the mummy. I'm so sorry I said it, but like he'll do it. He'll do it in a way.
He would.
Exactly. And like honestly, I'm here for it, especially if it's Clive Barker and it's like super weird. And he's like, "Be my mummy," or like, "Be my slave," or like weird vibes. Like, let me just stab you a million times, and we'll be in pain together forever. And it's like weird, sexual, and you shouldn't be turned on by it, but you kind of are.
You definitely love Dracula. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I am who I am.
Then we almost got a Joe Dante directed movie that would have had...
Whoa!
That would have had Daniel Day-Lewis as a brooding mummy, and it was written by John Sayles, who wrote Alligator, and he's written a bunch of like really. I think John Sayles is a fantastic writer. That was the next iteration of this.
Yeah, but also
with Daniel
Joe
Day-Lewis as a
Dante,
brooding
like,
mummy.
That would
I know.
be like there probably would have been such a great like kind of critter in there too. You
Oh,
know?
it would have, the practical effects I bet would have been
Yeah.
amazing. Daniel Day-Lewis, I can't get over Daniel
He'd be
Day-Lewis
a hot
as a
mummy.
He'd be a
Would have been a hot mummy.
mummy.
Because this would have been like late 80s, early 90s too.
Steamy
The
mummy.
earring. The little, they had to let him keep the hoop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also rewritten by Alligator Guy, like just
Yeah.
that also. That I just don't want to glaze over because that's incredible.
If
Because
they had
Alligator
done that,
rules.
I bet it would have been more of a creature feature. Not that this isn't, but this is more like, you know, this mummy is so character driven, but they keep talking about the creature,
Yeah.
and I feel like that version would probably be like crazy
yeah.
creature.
It was set in contemporary times and focused on reincarnation with elements of a love story. It became close to being made, and some elements, like the flesh-eating scarabs, made it to the final product.
Wow.
And then, after that, 1994, George Romero returned to the project, but then his version was considered too dark and violent. Again, this is like a theme that has continued throughout all of
Were there
this
zombies
history.
in his?
You know what? There was. It sounds kind of wild. So it was like a female archaeologist, Helen, and her discovery of the tomb of Imhotep, and it was going to take place in American City in modern times, when he awakens as a result of his body having been exposed to rays from an MRI scan.
I love that though, because the archaeologists still do the MRI scan. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so funny. That's wild.
Yeah.
And then he was going, then I guess Imhotep was going to resurrect the mummy of Charis, which is from the original mummy. Like Charis was one of the big characters from the original. And he was going to go on a rampage against the grave robbers of his tomb. Yeah, and the studio wanted a more accessible picture. And so Mick Garris came back to the film in 1995.
Damn.
Jesus
And he wanted to
Christ.
combine the 1932 film and 1942's The Mummy's Tomb. That didn't get made. In 1996, they hired someone to do a new script, and that is when Sommers, the director, Stephen Sommers, got involved, and he wanted to do Indiana Jones or Jason the Argonauts with the mummy as the creature giving the hero a hard time.
I mean, that's a perfect summary.
It is. But then it got put on hold, and it was only until George Miller's Babe, Pig in the City was a massive flop for Universal Studios, and they needed a hit film. And so Sommers was able to pitch it again, and that is how we got to this movie.
and a ride. We got a ride
Yeah.
out of it. Universal
ride.
Studios.
And a big hit. It was a big hit.
That is an insane, that is wild history.
That production timeline is
I
crazy.
feel
That is
like that's
insane.
like every incredible movie has like these really long-winded timelines. Like, oh, it was never made, and it's always the ones that like were almost never made that are like
Right.
the iconic. Like, it's almost better that it had that track record, or else it wouldn't have been as good, in my opinion.
Well, and I do think that like elements of these movies probably infused into the script
Yeah.
at some point, because like I said, they talk about the scarabs in one of them, and I feel like some parts of this somehow I think he was sort of if not like directly related to it, he was like homaging maybe some of the history of the film, because there are definitely moments when I was reading some of the history, it's like, oh, I could see kind of maybe that he was like kind of tipping his hat to what came before in some cases.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think honestly though, like the fact that it has combined so many different elements of all of these genres, like this is something that, you know, it's very clear why this movie was one of the best, I think one of the highest grossing films of 1999.
Huge. Yeah, it was a huge hit. And in fact, the studio was like kind of feeling anxious about it, because they had done like a what do they call it?
Screen test?
Yeah, screen test, and it reacted so poorly.
Really?
Really?
Yeah.
Is it because they were scared?
So it said that test audiences reacted poorly to the film's title, which conjured up negative impressions of an old horror film.
Oh, well, they're just fucking lamos.
Yeah, they're lame.
Yeah.
Oh man, it looks like this was the 8th highest performing box office movie of 1999. And above that was, the best. Oh my God. Number 1 was Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. And then,
Oh, of course.
Of course. 2 was The Sixth Sense. All right. I will give The Sixth Sense. I'm actually surprised by that. I didn't realize The Sixth Sense would have. I think it.
Oh, yeah.
Then Austin Powers. Then Toy Story 2.
Austin Powers.
Yep, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. Yep. Then Toy Story 2, then The Matrix, and then Tarzan, and then the last one that's beating The Mummy is Big Daddy.
Oh. Well,
It's kind of incredible.
audiences sometimes.
Poor judgment. Man,
Wow.
but yeah.
Wow, what a list. What a list.
Yeah.
Wow.
Austin Powers.
Austin Powers. Yeah, that was that
Oh
year.
my God.
But isn't that incredible too that like in 1999, like most of those movies were genre films that were being the biggest hits, but also that the second highest grossing film was a horror movie. And I think still at that time, people were, turning their noses up at the genre in general. Being like, oh yeah, this is like, nobody wants to make horror movies. And now like, look at us now, fam.
Right. Well, and I think that was the thing because, like, in the early, I think the 90s is a weird period for horror because you have, in the very beginning of the decade, a lot of like more artistic type, but like fucked up and nihilistic because, you had like the Alien 3 who came out, which is one of the bleakest of the films, and you had like Jacob's Ladder, and you had Candyman. You had like a lot of like very dark films, and then you went into the sort of teen slasher boom that happened from the mid 90s all the way up to this movie coming out. And then I think people kind of turned their nose up to it because, again, it was teen flavored horror, and then you get this sort of hitting all sort of quadrants of, and it's doing such a great job, and we're doing interesting things with The Sixth Sense and with this film that I think it was like a renaissance in a way.
Yeah, I mean, like all of that whole era was it was all original writing. Studios were taking risks on, it wasn't something that was a franchise. It wasn't something that they could just bank on. You don't have to make a revival of something. I mean, in some ways the Mummy was, but at the same time, like there was so much original storytelling that was happening. And like for horror to kind of like be triumphant, or genre as a whole, the sci-fi, the adventures, like all these things, like that was such a great, I think, moment and maybe a turning point for the way that the film industry has, become even now. And this is, how many years ago?
I would also say, though, that The Mummy, even though, it is banking on a franchise, it was a franchise that had lost its luster.
Yes.
I mean, before this movie, when was the last time The Mummy by Universal Pictures, like a movie that was The Mummy, came out, Like, I don't think it had, like, the name recognition of, like, a Jurassic Park would, or, Jaws or anything like that. It had been laying dormant for so long that I think it might have actually, like, the test audiences, it worked against them because it like, oh, this seems like an old movie. Yeah. And so I think that the fact that it kind of succeeded in spite of the fact that it was like a franchise from the 1930s is saying something.
I agree. Classic Frasier.
So have you guys seen all three of them?
I've seen the first two and I refuse to see anything after.
Me too. Same thing. I loved 2. I haven't revisited 2 in a very long time, so I remember loving it as a child, but yeah, I haven't revisited it, and I don't want to see the third one. I don't want to know. That's how Frasier broke his back and like was like in pain for so long. I think filming
From
the third one
movie? Or the third
one.
Really?
The third one.
No, I didn't know
really?
that. I didn't know because I know that was like a big turning point for him. Not good.
That's the one that takes place in China, I think.
Yeah,
Is it?
it's,
So what year was that?
That was in 2008, I want to say.
I'm pretty sure that's the one where he broke his back. And that's what like kind of was like the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the end of like a certain era for Brendan Fraser.
But now he's making a comeback, baby. I'm so excited. He's going to be in Batgirl, right?
Oh yeah,
Is he really?
He's going to be in Batgirl. That's going to be his big move.
Yeah.
That's his next move. Yeah, I think you're right. It must have been 2008.
2008, Mummy, The Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. And yeah, so that would have been...
He had a tough time.
I'm pretty sure. Let me just make sure I'm not like totally full of shit.
They recast Maria Bello as Evelyn in that movie.
Which was not a good choice. Not a good choice. Oh, man.
One final thing, because I meant to bring this up earlier. When we were talking about Jonathan, on this watch, I kind of think he's queer-coded.
Oh, I can see that.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment in it where like I wrote the line down and I literally cannot find it now, but he was almost like agreeing with Evie that Brendan Fraser, that his character Rick, which I'm sorry, Rick O'Connell is not a good adventure name. It's kind of boring. But it's like he makes a comment about kind of that he's attractive in a way. And I can't remember exactly what the line was, but it was like this kind of line is like, oh, okay, so he's a single man and he's hanging out with a sister. I'm like, this is queer coded for gay.
You know what? I never thought of that. And I like Jonathan now even more. I mean, I think that he's such a well-rounded character, but I wish that it was more overt then. I feel like I wish they didn't disguise anything, because I actually think it would have made it stronger. But again, 1999, they were, shame on them.
It was a hard time to be a gay man in Hollywood. That is for sure, in terms of like what.
Okay, I found the quote, because I was like determined to find this quote about him getting injured. So it wasn't that he hurt himself specifically on the third Mummy, but he, in that really good interview I think he did with GQ last year about like his comeback, was that by the time I did the third Mummy picture in China in 2008, I was put together with tape and ice. And he was like, basically he said, I was building an exoskeleton for myself every day. So like years of doing his own stunts, like he was basically just really not in good shape. And I think that's why I'm at the Mummy thing.
Was it years of doing stunts dangerously? Because I kind of wonder about that. Like, were there no crash mats? Like, what would have I mean, I understand like it's cool to do your own stunts, and I mean, but it's still like, such a risk for a studio to let their lead do their own stunts. I mean, remember what, happened with Tom Cruise when he broke his ankle jumping out of the plane? I forget which Mission Impossible, but that just stops production. Like, what are you going to do? Well, I hope that he gets, again, I hope he gets back on his feet. I'm rooting for him. I will forever love him. Wait, was he George of the Jungle, right?
He was George of the Jungle.
What a hunk.
And there's a moment here where he's wearing like the same hair. Like I feel like he's wearing the George of the Jungle hair when he's found in the jail. It's like, oh, that's the George of the Jungle wig.
Also, I loved him in Blast from the Past too. So,
oh hell yeah! Apparently, he was actually fully choked out in The Mummy, because when they were filming the prison scene with the noose, he actually blacked out while they were doing it.
No.
Yeah, I think he just like didn't do stunts right. Like he got his first time, he like got extra money when he got thrown into an arcade machine and like bruised a rib, and then he just kept doing his own stunts, and he probably just wasn't doing them right, so he had to get like knee replacements and spinal surgery and all this crazy
scary
shit. I know, Jesus.
It's just like, ugh.
No, thank you.
No thanks.
Thank you.
But do we want to wrap this up and give it our rating out of 5?
Sounds good to me.
Terry.
Oh, before we do though, Chelsea, watching this again, is this still a scarred for life moment, or did this movie still scare you as it did when you were a kid?
Yeah, especially now that like I'm deathly allergic to mosquito bites. They just find me, so I understand what it's like to be. Well, it's not like deathly allergic, but like if you get eaten by mosquitoes all summer, I'm just like neurotically spraying bug spray on me like all the time, and I look like a crazy person. So the idea of scarabs really, really messes me up. So yes, I think it's still really scary. And the same thing that really scared me about it. I also think like, again, like the idea of curses and ghosts that can physically harm you. Yeah, totally. Everything about this movie actually spooked me.
So the mosquito part, I have a question. Are you one of the people that like the mosquitoes just want to eat you up alive and like will ignore everyone else? Because that's me.
That's me. I feel your pain. We can do this together.
Last summer, I was at my friend's. They live in a neighborhood that has a public swimming pool, and we were lounging by there, and I'm just sitting there, and no one else is getting eaten. I'm just like, guys, I gotta go, because I like him. And the next day, I'm just covered in bites, and no one else is like, I'm fine. I'm like, God damn it.
We just, you know what? We're just sweet people. We're sweet people.
That's what I'm gonna tell myself at least.
Consolation.
Are we ready to give this movie our rating out of 5?
Yes.
All right, Terry. How many flesh-eating scarabs out of 5 do you give The Mummy?
Well, it's funny. I was telling Mary Beth before we started that I went to look at I use Letterboxd to like categorize everything now, because when you're writing and you're critiquing a lot of movies, it helps to have that list of movies you've watched. And when I went to go add this movie to my watch again list, I realized I had given it 2 stars. Back when I first read it, and that was based on a memory out of 5.
Oh yeah, that's right. Letterboxd is out of 5. Yeah,
but that was based on a memory of me watching this back in 1999. Because again, I had not seen it since the movie theater, and watching it now, I think this movie is a lot of fun. I'm glad that we had this conversation, because I feel a lot better now in terms of the kind of parts that were like kind of jabbing me in terms of like, I don't like that they did this and this and this and this, but. I think this movie is a blast. I think the cast is phenomenal, and they're just like Mary Beth said, it's a bisexual dream. Like it's no one in this cast is not good looking, and they all just are phenomenal. And yeah, so I had a great time watching this. So I'm going to give it 3.5 flesh-eating scarabs. That's what I'm going to give it this time. Which I know is probably going to be on the low end for everyone else. But Mary Beth, how many flesh-eating scarabs do you give it?
4.5. Surprising no one. I obviously know that there are problems, but I still think this is a near perfect movie. I loved it as a kid. I love it now. I have so much fun with it. My bisexual awakening. I just love everything about this movie. It makes me so happy. It is so much fun to watch, and I think everyone is pitch perfect in it. So I'm giving it 4.5. Chelsea, you have the final word.
Man. I mean, is it bad if I give it? Well, it has some issues. So I'm going to say I'll also give it 4.5 scarabs, because it makes me excited to go to the movies. This is like the best kind of like escapism filmmaking that I want to see. And I really like the characters, obviously well performed. I'm in love with Rachel. I'm in love with Brendan. I'm in love with all of them. The Magi. Love them all. But I think that as far as scary, spooky, fun, funny, that this is the kind of movie that you want to stand up and applaud at the end of watching. And I the fact that I want to watch it multiple times is kind of a testament to how good it was to me. So 4.5 scarabs.
Perfect popcorn horror movie for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you again so much, Chelsea, for joining us. And finally, I get to talk to you face to face because this has been a joy for me. So thank you for joining us and bringing The Mummy back into my purview. So where can our listeners find you? And do you have anything coming up that you can share with us?
Oh, man. So you can find... Do I give my @? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just checking.
All right, Yep.
You can find me...
No, we need to know your address. You want to send all our listeners to your house.
Right. So I live in New York City. My on social media, I'm just at Chelsea Lupkin. And you can maybe see some more work from me coming out soon. There's obviously a lot of delish videos, some more episodes of Iconic Eats, Julia trying everything. So we got all that foodie content for you. But also, I'm working on a short horror right now that's in post. So maybe it might go to film festivals. I don't know. But it's a feminist demon horror. And who doesn't want to watch that?
I so want to watch that. Can we watch it now?
Yeah, maybe.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah. So
awesome.
Cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
This is fun.
This is so fun. Well, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Mummy from 1999? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. As Chelsea knows, it really helps out with the algorithm shit.
It does.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thanks everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.